killed. That they could have took her home. She was been at that club. That girl waited on her to come out that club. All this shit over a nigga. Really? Let that shit go. What? Y'all act like these niggas got gold on their dick or some shit. What the fuck? I'm not finna, I'm not finna, I ain't finna, Nope. Two lives. 2 lives. And God is trying to tell me something, y'all. I keep being in these close-ass situations. I keep being in these close-ass situations.
In an update tonight, a judge has reduced a Montgomery murder suspect's bail. Katina Davis was arrested following a weekend triple shooting that killed 1 person and injured 2 on East Patton Avenue in West Montgomery. The bail for her murder charge was originally set at $1.5 million. Today, District Judge Pamela Higgins reduced it to just $150,000. Her 2 assault charges bail amounts stay the same. They currently total $45,000.
It was just after 1 in the morning when East Patton Avenue broke its silence. The hum of a passing car, the sudden screech of tires, and then the impossible. A door swings open while the vehicle is still moving. Someone steps out. The driver doesn't stop. A single gunshot splits the night. Then another. Then another. The echoes ricochet between dark houses as if the street itself is trying to remember what happened. A woman's scream tears through the air, then is swallowed by a stillness so deep it feels unnatural. When the flashing blue lights arrive, she is lying face down on the asphalt, her life spilling into the cracks of the road she's walked 100 times before. Her name is Reese, 32 years old, a daughter, a friend, a woman whose smile could soften anyone, except the one person who, according to police, put her in the ground. This wasn't a stranger in the shadows. This wasn't some faceless predator. It was someone she trusted. Someone who knew her laugh, her fears, and exactly where to aim. Was it love gone wrong? Jealousy with a hair trigger? Or a plan so carefully disguised that no one saw it coming? If you believe you'd recognize the danger before it reached your doorstep, you're wrong. Most victims thought the same thing, until their names ended up in headlines and their faces on memorial t-shirts. Subscribe now, because the warning you ignore today could be the story someone tells about you tomorrow.
Welcome to Twisted Crimes Files, where the darkest truths come to light. Stay with us for chilling stories you won't forget, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a case.
Erica L.J. Reese grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, surrounded by people who believed she was destined for more than the city could offer. She had an easy laugh, the kind that made strangers feel like old friends, and a way of turning even the dullest day into a reason to celebrate. Her family says she was the glue that held them together, steady, dependable, the one you could call at 3 in the morning and know she'd pick up. She loved music that told the truth about life, the kind that mixed joy and pain in equal measure. Friends remember her singing along at backyard cookouts, a plate in her hand, teasing whoever was on the grill that day. She wasn't rich, she wasn't famous, but she carried herself like a woman who knew her worth. In the last year of her life, Erica was chasing a better future. She'd been talking about starting her own small business, and she'd begun saving every extra dollar to make it happen. She wanted stability, a home of her own, and a life she didn't have to keep escaping from on weekends. But she also had a loyalty that sometimes came at a cost. She gave people chance after chance, even when others told her to walk away. If you were her friend, she would defend you to the end. And for one person, that kind of loyalty wasn't just a blessing, it was a weapon. Erica didn't know that someone she considered part of her inner circle was quietly rewriting the story of their friendship. From the outside, they looked inseparable. But behind closed doors, the dynamic was shifting in ways she couldn't see, or maybe didn't want to see. Everyone loved her, except one person. Katina Davis was 31 years old, born and raised in the same city as Erica. In Montgomery, familiarity can feel like family, and for years that's how they moved Two women who seemed to have each other's backs no matter what. They shared rides, shared secrets, even shared the same circle of friends. To anyone looking in, this was the kind of friendship that could survive anything. But the truth was, Katina's presence in Erica's life wasn't just casual. It was constant. If Erica was out at a gathering, Katina was usually nearby. If a photo went up on social media, it was rare to see one without the other. In public, Katina could be warm and funny, the kind of woman who knew how to keep a conversation alive and a room entertained. But there were moments, subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, when her tone would shift, her eyes would harden, and the smile would fade just enough to be felt. Those moments didn't linger long, but they were there. There were stories told quietly in their circle about disagreements, about Katina's sharp words when she felt overlooked or disrespected. Little comments that seemed harmless in a moment, but hinted at something heavier beneath the surface. Erica didn't seem to treat these as red flags. To her, this was just friendship. Messy, complicated, but worth keeping. And Katina stayed close enough to know where Erica was, who she was with, and what mattered most to her. That closeness, the kind built over years, is why no one would have suspected that one day their paths would lead to the sound of gunfire. 3 weeks before the shooting, the tone between them began to shift in ways most people wouldn't catch unless they'd been watching for a long time. The posts that used to tag each other fell off. The inside jokes under photos stopped. When they did appear together, the comments felt tighter, guarded, like each word had to pass through a filter first. 2 weeks out, friends noticed how the energy changed at gatherings. Erica moved through the room as she always did, hugging, laughing, making space for everyone. Katina hovered more, not with affection, but with attention. Eyes tracing every conversation, measuring who stood too close, who got an extra second of Erica's smile. When someone brought up weekend plans, Katina answered for both of them. Erica smiled and let it go. 10 days before, an argument flared and then vanished as quickly as it came. It wasn't a scene, it was a silence. A text that went unanswered. A call that rang out. A story that went up, then disappeared. Nothing dramatic enough to become gossip. Just a series of tiny absences where warmth used to live. A week out, Erica started talking more about getting her life in order. She was saving, mapping out her next steps, deciding what she would and wouldn't tolerate. She wanted peace she didn't have to fight for. People close to her heard the resolve in her voice. No threats, no teatrics. Just a woman setting a boundary you couldn't see but could feel. 5 days before, there was a moment at a small hangout. Music low, plates half empty, voices rolling over each other. Someone mentioned a man they both knew. The air in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. No names were spoken with heat, but the temperature of every glance changed. Erica excused herself to the kitchen. When she returned, the smile was back, but it didn't reach as far as it used to. For days before, the orbit tightened. Katina's check-ins grew more frequent. Where are you? Who's there? When will you be back? The questions came wrapped as concern, but the volume told its own story. Erica gave short answers. She didn't want trouble. She wanted quiet. 3 days before a photo appeared, Erica under warm daylight, head tilted, the kind of picture that looks like it was taken by someone who knew her angles. No caption, just a timestamp and a location tag. The likes stacked fast. Among them, a familiar account scrolled past without pressing the heart. 2 days before, Erica spent an evening with people who made her feel safe. Someone put a phone on the table to show a video. A notification nudged across the top, an old thread lighting up. She locked the screen and turned the phone face down. That night, she slept poorly and woke early, eyes swollen but mind clear. The day before, she moved through her errands with purpose. Groceries, gas, a stop to drop off something for family. A short visit with a friend who noticed how Erica kept glancing at her phone and then away, refusing to be pulled into a conversation she'd already had a dozen times. Late afternoon, she sat in her car and let a song finish before turning the key. She stared through the windshield at nothing in particular, as if she were deciding between two doors no one else could see. That evening, there was one last attempt at peace. A message sent with careful punctuation. A call that connected, then ended before it could soften anything. What followed were the kind of clipped replies that ring like metal. Curt, cool, unbending. No threats, no pleas, just a line that would not be crossed. By midnight, the city had thinned to headlights and porch bulbs. Erica's location drifted across a neighborhood map that locals know by heart. Another hovered not far away, paths curving toward each other, not by accident, but by a momentum that had been building for weeks. If you're watching this and telling yourself you'd catch these shifts before they turn lethal, you're making the mistake most people make. Subscribe now, because the proof you ignore in someone else's story is often the warning you miss in your own. No one took a final selfie. No one posted a goodbye. The last image from that night was a street lamp pouring a circle of light onto cracked pavement. By morning, the circle would be cut with chalk. In the hours before the shooting, Montgomery was wrapped in the quiet that only comes after midnight. Most of the city was asleep, but in certain corners, life still moved, slow and deliberate. Streetlights hummed over empty sidewalks. Somewhere a dog barked once, then stopped. Erica spent her last evening weaving through familiar places, each stop ordinary enough to look harmless from the outside. A quick visit to a friend's house, a friend she hadn't seen in weeks, where conversation flickered between laughter and something more serious. Her phone stayed within reach, but face down, the screen lighting only when someone else's name appeared. She wasn't eager to answer every call. Around 10 p.m., she left, driving through streets she knew by muscle memory. She stopped for gas, standing under the harsh fluorescent glow of the canopy. The security camera above caught her with one hand in her pocket, the other resting on the car as she waited for the pump to click. It was a small, almost cinematic snapshot, the kind you don't notice until you know it's the last time someone will be seen in the ordinary rhythm of life. Later, she was spotted a late-night spot where locals grab food after hours. She ordered quietly, ate standing near the counter, exchanged a few polite words with someone she recognized, then left without lingering. Her movements after that became harder to trace. The route between her last known stop and East Patton Avenue is short, but it holds more than one turn where something or someone could be waiting. A street camera caught the blur of her car passing at 1:06 a.m., headlights slicing through the dark. In another vehicle, close enough to matter, another set of headlights followed. Not tailing recklessly, not closing the gap, just there, always there. By 1:15 a.m., both vehicles had reached the same stretch of road. The houses here sit close to the street, their porches dark, their windows glowing faintly from inside. No music, no voices outside, just the low hum of engines in the distance. The next sequence unfolded in less than a minute. Words were exchanged, sharp, low, and heated. A car door opened while the tires were still in motion. Footsteps on pavement. Then the first gunshot split the air. The sound traveled fast, bouncing off walls and into the ears of anyone still awake. The second and third shots came in quick succession, louder now, closer. One hit an adult male, life-threatening. Another tore into an adult female, leaving her injured but conscious. The final round struck Erica. She collapsed instantly, the impact stealing whatever breath she had left. In the seconds after, the scene was chaos wrapped in silence. The shooter's movements were measured, not panicked. A car pulled away. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy, carried in the night air toward the flashing lights already racing to the scene. When officers arrived, the male victim was gone, driven by friends to a hospital. The other woman was clutching her arm, in pain but alive. And Erica, she wasn't moving. Her body lay in the middle of East Patton Avenue, her hair fanned out on the asphalt, her hand half curled as though reaching for something that wasn't there. If you think someone you love could never be the one to pull the trigger, you're trusting the same way Erica did. Subscribe now, because the truth about danger is that it rarely comes from strangers. In the moments after the last gunshot faded, the street seemed to fold in on itself. No more shouts, no more running footsteps, Just the distant hum of a car moving away at a steady, unhurried pace. Inside that car, the driver's grip on the wheel didn't betray panic. The engine sound was even, like someone taking a calculated exit rather than fleeing in fear. No screech of tires. No irátique swerving. Just a controlled departure, leaving behind a street that still smelled of gunpowder. The suspect, Katina Davis, would later be described by some as composed in the hours after the shooting. Not the kind of composure that comes from innocence, but the kind that feels rehearsed. She didn't make a frantic call to 911. She didn't rush toward help. Instead, her next moves were quiet, almost methodical, staying out of sight, keeping her voice low when she did speak, making sure her version of events reached certain ears before the police's did. By the time detectives began knocking on doors, the story, circulating from Katina's side, was already stripped of certain details. Conversations she'd had in person were now reduced to vague summaries. Her name wasn't mentioned in the same breath as the gun, not yet. But the absence of her name in the earliest whispers didn't last long. As patrol cars rolled through East Patton Avenue and crime scene tape cordoned off the block, the Montgomery Police Department's detectives began their slow, deliberate work. First came the canvass. Door-to-door knocks, asking neighbors what they'd heard, what they'd seen, who they'd noticed driving past in the last hour. A few residents admitted they'd seen a second vehicle before the shots rang out. One even remembered the distinct profile of the driver. The description matched someone detectives already knew. The evidence collection started with the pavement itself. Yellow markers rose one by one around shell casings glinting under portable floodlights. Each casing was bagged, logged, and photographed. Officers traced their alignment and direction, trying to reconstruct the shooter's stance, the angle of fire, the distance between the gun and its targets. From there, the focus shifted to surrounding properties. Several homes had security cameras, some facing the street, others angled toward driveways. Footage was collected frame by frame, starting hours before the shooting. One camera caught Erica's vehicle passing. Another, just half a block away, captured a second set of headlights trailing behind. The digital forensics team began pulling phone records, pings to nearby cell towers, call logs, and text histories for everyone known to be in the area at the time. It didn't take long for a pattern to emerge. A flurry of messages earlier that night between Erica and Katina, followed by a long gap. Then renewed activity just minutes before the shots were fired. Detectives compared those records to vehicle movement data. The timing lined up too closely to be coincidence. Witness statements added further weight. The injured female victim, once stable enough to speak, recalled seeing a familiar face in the chaos. She remembered the voice, sharp, angry, just before the gun went off. By midday, the narrative was solidifying. The ballistics, the camera footage, the phone data, and the eyewitness accounts all converged on the same name. Katina Davis was brought in for questioning. In the interview room, her tone was measured, but her story was full of small, telling fractures. She insisted she hadn't been on East Patton Avenue at the time of the shooting, but when shown still frames from the security footage, her eyes flickered, just once, before she leaned back in her chair. Within hours, an arrest warrant was signed. She was booked into the Montgomery County Detention Facility on charges of murder, first-degree assault, a second-degree assault. Her initial bail was set at over $1.5 million, a figure prosecutors argued was necessary given the severity of the crime and the risk she posed. For a moment, it seemed like the system had moved decisively. But in court the next day, the story twisted. Judge Pamela Higgins, despite the district attorney's objection, reduced the murder bail from $1.5 million to $150,000. The two assault charges carry their own separate bonds, totaling $45,000, still under review. The decision rippled through the community. People asked how someone accused of taking a life and injuring two others could walk free while awaiting trial. Some saw it as a crack in the foundation of justice. Others whispered about influence, connections, and the quiet ways certain cases shift once they enter the courtroom. If you think the justice system always keeps dangerous people exactly where they belong, you've never watched it up close. Subscribe now, because what you don't know about how the law works can be the very thing that blindsides you when it matters most. The arrest of Katina Davis was the moment many in Montgomery thought the story had found its turning point. For detectives, the chain of evidence was clear enough to put handcuffs on her wrists. For the families of the victims, it was a signal that the weight of the law was finally pressing down where it belonged. When she was led into the Montgomery County Detention Facility, the booking photos captured a woman whose expression gave little away. No tears, no wild-eyed panic, just the kind of stillness that can read as either shock or calculation. The charges were as severe as the crime itself. Murder for the death of Erica Reese, first-degree assault for the male victim clinging to life in the hospital, and second-degree assault for the wounded female survivor. The bail was set high, over $1.5 million. It was a figure meant to send a message. This was not a defendant who could simply walk back into the community. Prosecutors spoke openly about the risk she posed. The violence wasn't random, they said. It was directed, deliberate, and executed at close range. If she could turn the kind of rage on people she knew, what could stop it from happening again? But less than 24 hours later, the case took a turn. In a hearing before Judge Pamela Higgins, the defense argued for a bail reduction, painting Katina as a woman with deep roots in the community, no prior record, and a family willing to support her if she were released. The district attorney's office fought back hard. Darrell Bailey, the DA, urged the court to keep the original figure in place, pointing to the seriousness of the charges and the danger to witnesses. The room was tense as Judge Higgins spoke, and then the decision fell like a stone into water. The murder charge bail was reduced from $1.5 million to $150,000. The bonds for the assault charges, totaling $45,000, were left under advisement. The math was simple. With $195,000 in total bail, the path to release had just been made significantly easier. News of the decision spread fast, igniting a mix of outrage and disbelief. In a city where many had seen lesser charges hold higher bonds, this felt like a betrayal. Families of the victims sat in stunned silence. For them, justice had been tangible for less than a day before it began to slip through their fingers. In hallways, outside the courthouse, in quiet corners of local diners, the same questions were whispered. How? Why? Was this about legal merit, or was there something unseen at work? For those who believe the justice system always moves in a straight line, this was proof it could bend in ways that favor the accused. And for the people left grieving Erica Reese, it was a reminder that the courtroom's version of justice doesn't always match the heart's. If you've never sat across from a judge and watched a violent offender's bail drop, like the weight of the crime never happened, you might still believe the system always protects you. It doesn't. Subscribe now, because one day, the decision made in a quiet courtroom could change your life, and you might not even see it coming. When word spread that Katina Davis might walk free while awaiting trial, the city's reaction split down the middle. In some corners, people shook their heads in disbelief. They'd seen the charges, murder, assault, and they couldn't reconcile them with the idea of her going home to sleep in her own bed. For Erica's family, the thought was unbearable. How could they pass the spot on East Patton Avenue where she'd taken her last breath, knowing the woman accused of killing her could be out there breathing the same air? But there were also quieter voices. People who claimed to know Katina well, who called her misunderstood, who insisted there was more to the story. They talked about loyalty, about friendships soured by outsiders, about conflicts that escalated too far. Some hinted that the truth wasn't what it seemed. Social media became a battleground. Erica's friends posted memorials, smiling photos of her, memories of her laugh, words about the hole she'd left behind. In the comment sections, arguments sparked. Some demanded the court reverse the decision. Others asked pointed questions about the male victim, about who else might have been involved, about the relationships that tied all three victims and the accused together. In the middle of that storm, one detail kept surfacing. a suggestion of a love triangle, or at least a tangled web of affection and betrayal. Nobody was willing to say it outright in public, but in private conversations, it was painted in sharper lines. A man connected to both women. Past tensions that had never really cooled. Moments when glances across a room carried more than just casual curiosity. No one could prove motive yet, but the undercurrent was there, a chain of jealousy and resentment that may have stretched back years. Then there was the strange behavior in the days following the shooting. Katina's social media presence, once constant, went silent. No public displays of grief for Erica. No messages for the surviving victims. Just an absence like a door shut tight. In contrast, some in her circle continued to interact with accounts tied to the victims. A like here, a comment there. For outsiders looking in, it felt surreal. People maintaining online connections to those directly affected by a killing as if nothing had changed. For Erica's family, that silence and that strange overlap only deepened the wound. They wanted answers, not half-truths. They wanted to see the person accused of ending her life held accountable, not quietly slipping back into the rhythms of everyday life. If you believe that grief and anger always find resolution in court, you're wrong. Sometimes the aftermath isn't justice. It's confusion, it's silence, and it's the unsettling feeling that parts of the story will never be told. Subscribe now, because the next time the truth is kept behind closed doors, you'll want to know how to spot the cracks. The funeral was held on a warm May afternoon, the kind of day that would have made Erica smile. The sanctuary was packed long before the service began, people standing shoulder to shoulder, spilling into the aisles. The air was thick with perfume, cologne, and a low murmur of grief. At the front, her casket rested beneath a spray of white lilies. Behind it, a framed photo caught her mid-laugh, head tilted back, eyes bright. It was the way most people wanted to remember her. Before the streetlights, before the gunshots, the pastor spoke of her kindness, her loyalty, her belief in second chances. He read from a book of Psalms about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. He told the family that God sees all, even when justice feels slow, even when answers never come. Family members took the microphone one by one. Some could barely get the words out. Others spoke with fire, determined that her name wouldn't be reduced to a headline. A cousin talked about Erica's dream of starting her own business. A childhood friend remembered the way she used to defend anyone being picked on, no matter the cost. And then came the part that pulled at the room, a call for forgiveness. The pastor reminded everyone that holding on to hate could destroy you from the inside out. Some nodded. Some shook their heads. Forgiveness was not a word everyone was ready to carry. When the service ended, the crowd filed out slowly, as if leaving would make the loss more permanent. At the graveside, hands lingered on the casket, whispers of goodbye caught in the breeze. In the weeks after, life in Montgomery moved on, at least on the surface. The news cycle turned to other crimes, other tragedies. But for those closest to Erica, the hole she left didn't shrink. It just became part of the landscape. What most people didn't see was the quiet unraveling that happens after the cameras are gone. Friends questioning their own circles. Families setting new boundaries. People replaying old conversations, wondering if they missed the moment when things could have been stopped. This is the part of the story no one shares in detail. The part where the danger doesn't feel like a stranger lurking in the dark, but someone who's already in your home, already in your phone, already woven into your life. We all like to think we'd see the red flags, that we'd notice the shift in tone, the tightening of boundaries, the heat in someone's eyes when we talk to the wrong person. But Erica's story is proof that trust can be the very thing that blinds you. Love shouldn't come with bruises. Friendship shouldn't end in death. And loyalty should never be something that gets you killed. If you're still watching and you haven't subscribed, ask yourself why. Tell us in the comments. Because ignoring this story won't make it less real. It only makes you less prepared when the danger in someone else's life becomes the danger in your own. Comment below. Was this jealousy or cold calculation? Be careful who you trust. Not every smile is safe. Rest in peace, Erica L.J. Reese.